If I can just touch on this with Alok. Alok, I know that in India is a very big country. There's a vast pool of talent available. But also, this line of business is basically segmented into 3 sectors. You have those listed entities, then you have the NBFCs, and then you truly have the smaller MFIs, which are either NGOs or an upgraded version. Now, I guess the real impact would be on the third category to benefit from this. How easy do you see in India is it to attract the sort of quality INEDs into this space? I mean, attracting them into boards of listed companies is a different challenge, but from a true MFI, how from your industry association, how have you seen that?
Thank you. I mean, as you rightly said, that different kinds of institutions are able to attract different kinds of talent. If you look at a large listed company with a very large asset base and good profits, obviously the ability of an organization like that to get good talent, to be able to get in high-quality directors or independent is much easier. When you move down to the second tier of institutions, there again, in my own experience, I do find that they've had fair success in making that happen. To frankly share with you, I mean, I was personally very surprised to find that in a number of tier 2 institutions, you've had people who have come in as the chairman, who have been extremely senior government bureaucrats or central bankers and so on. So really first-rate talent coming on board. However, when you go down to the third level, I must confess that the reality is a bit different, and hence we do have a bit of a challenge there. But having said that, I think we must not, we must recognize the fact that the tier 3 institutions, while very large in numbers, are in point of fact at a sectoral level very, very small. The larger institutions, my members in fact, would really constitute over 80–85% of the sector.
Can I throw that same question to Greg, but in a slightly different perspective? How do you balance incentivizing a professional to spend his time in a smaller MFI?
Yeah, I don't, is this on? Yeah, I guess I don't, I share Alok's frustration that we don't have easy answers for some of these problems. I would say we shouldn't overlook some of the benefits that have come from, you know, the professionalization and the scale that some of the MFIs in India have undergone. They're under much more significant scrutiny. And we don't want to spend too much of our time talking about SKS, but the fact that it is now a listed company, it is subject to a new set of standards in terms of audit, in terms of the number of independent directors that it has to have, in terms of its quarterly reporting. And so we shouldn't, and I know Alok is being realistic about how impactful some of those changes are, but the fact is that we're talking a lot about SKS today because we know a lot about what's happening. And part of that came out in the prospectus of going and becoming a listed company. One can only imagine the number of corporate governance issues that remain hidden today in India because institutions haven't gone through that formalization process. So I don't know if I've answered your question. I've only said that I think it is a challenge for the smaller institutions, but I don't think we should underestimate the benefits of some of these things, not to say that those solve the corporate governance problems.
Can we get a perspective from the audience, from anybody representing an MFI, as to the sort of challenges they envisage in getting this sort of independence advice, and whether they see it as important to the success of the organization? Can we have some comments?
Couple of other things to discuss over here. Can I do that right now?
If it is relevant to the topic, yes.
Oh yes, of course, it is relevant to that. Okay, in terms of number one, the presentation that Greg made, I would like to add to it in terms of if you're looking at PAR for Pakistan, If we take out one or two institutions that went through that crisis, I would say that our recent performance annual report for 2009 says that the PAR 30 days for Pakistan was around 1.9%. So adjusting for 2 or 3 institutions, that's our PAR. Number 2, in terms of management and governance, to all 3 of you, where do you think the legal structure of an institution play an important role? Is that not the starting point for having good governance practices being put into place? Or am I totally wrong about it?
I will throw that question to Greg, who could perhaps cover from an Asian perspective.
Well, certainly, I mean, we see a whole range of legal forms in play in Asia. I mean, we have societies which heavily dominate in Bangladesh, NGOs aside from Grameen Bank. The requirements on corporate governance are actually quite minimal. We have NBFCs in India where the requirements are quite a bit more significant. We have microfinance banks in Pakistan where board members have to be approved by the central bank, and so you have various different levels of, and it does depend quite a bit on the legal requirement. Let me just go back to one point on the small MFIs. I think one of the problems we have in our industry is sometimes we get figurehead boards. And so we get people who, A, neither have the time nor the inclination and are merely there simply as a name to add to a board and who don't meaningfully participate in that organization's activities. And so we do have a significant, and I'm not sure that we have easy answers. I think a lot of it is around incentives. Why should somebody want to participate on a board? And particularly when there are reputational risks as well, putting your name on a board.
Thanks, Greg. I think that takes me into the next, nicely into the next question I want to bring up, talking about the time and the figurehead representation in the board, and whether that itself preempts the need to legislate governance rather than adopting it on a voluntary basis. Now, I know that world over, certainly from the listed fraternity, I think the codes have been developed, the frameworks have been developed on a voluntary basis, starting from the Cadbury report, the UK Combined Code. Most national association of accounting bodies have been giving leadership to developing codes, which the various SECs have been adopting. But this, again, does 2 things. One is it leaves a gap to those MFIs who are not either listed or regulated by the banking regulator. So how is that addressed? Alok.
I think the fact, and again take the comment which was made by the gentleman here from Pakistan, that the legal form, to what extent does that impact governance? I think there's no gainsaying the fact that that the legal form does have a fairly significant role to play in the scheme of things, and therefore, given a certain kind of legal form, there are legal requirements, and therefore, compliance of those requirements by itself does lead to governance at a higher level. Alongside with that, in terms of regulatory oversight, again, based on your legal form, the level of oversight is different. In India, as a bank, you have a certain kind of very, very stringent oversight. As a non-bank finance company, it is at a different level. As an NGO, it's hardly there. In fact, as we speak right now, there is really no good legal framework in place for oversight of NGO MFIs. There was a bill in Parliament about 2 years ago, still in the works as we speak. So therefore, the legal form is critical, and as a part of that, what is the kind of oversight the regulators exercise, I think is critical. Because once that framework is there, there are certain minimum requirements to be complied with, and therefore, to that extent, life does change.
Thanks. Yes, we have another question. Can someone get a mic across here?
I like to raise a couple of questions and comments, make a couple of comments. Greg mentioned about short-termism and listed investors. In fact,